The information in this video is provided for informational and educational purposes only.
Welcome to Dose of Deanne, where you'll get a little shot of what my life is like living with SMA. I would love to make exciting videos for you and bring the camera along wherever I go. However, when I'm doing something that's outside of my comfort zone, I really don't want to have to get permissions and set the camera up and do all that. So you'll just have to bear with me as I tell you about what I do. Like a couple weeks ago when I met with the state representative, it didn't exactly go as I had hoped, but I'm glad it's something that I did. Another thing that I went outside my comfort zone for is attending meetings on creating policy for the Jaco robotic arm. Well, robotic arms in general, to be a little more accurate. If you've ever wondered how you get policies in place for things like equipment and care and things like that, well, it varies from state to state and program to program and insurance company to insurance company. But for my state of Minnesota, there is a Health Services Advisory Council, and they advise DHS on the policies that should be put in place for things like equipment and services. In the past, they've talked about gender affirmation care, they've talked about chiropractic care, and in the future, they're talking about, I think it was midwives and home births, things like that, if that should be covered, and if so, what policies should be in place surrounding that. And for January and February, they talked about robotic arms. And specifically the Jaco robotic arm, because that's one of the only ones on the market right now. And I was invited by the company that provides Jacos to the meeting because they knew I would be interested in the policy created here in Minnesota. And I was very glad to be invited. I didn't know what to expect, and I'm kind of disappointed in how the process worked because unless you were a council member or invited to be at the meeting, at that first meeting, you couldn't really speak up or voice your opinion. And that was kind of a bummer because I felt like there were a lot of questions that I could have helped answer. Things like, how long does it take to learn how to use the Jaco? What ADLs does it assist with? And if the company would shut down, who maintains the arm? And do you need 24-hour care to use one? And will it become less useful with disease progression? Well, they only had the representative from Jaco to go on, and a physical therapist who has had clients receive a Jaco robotic arm. So they didn't have a lot of testimonial to go on to answer those questions. And if you didn't sign the disclosure form saying that you're not affiliated with the company and stating your reasons for going to the meeting, you couldn't really voice an opinion. So that was a little bit disappointing, but before the next meeting, I was sure to sign the disclosure form, and I sent it in a few days prior to the meeting. And I learned about what the questions they would be discussing that day would be. And let me read them for you so I get them accurate. So the questions they discussed were, when receiving Jaco requests, how long of a minimum economic use lifetime should be necessary? Now, I took this as, like, for example, a wheelchair, the lifetime use is 5 years. And I kind of compared the Jaco to a wheelchair. A wheelchair uh, mitigates lower limb impairment, where a Jaco does that for upper limb impairment. So I kind of compare the two, so I would think a 5 year span would be reasonable. But this question actually got turned around into should a minimum expectancy of use be attached to it. So let's say you have a terminal illness like ALS or are put on hospice. Should you still be able to get the Jaco robotic arm? And to me, that kind of floored me a little bit, even though I don't know why. But I think because you need a physical therapist and an assessment to use the Jaco, I don't think that expectations on life expectancy should be included. I mean, I had a life expectancy of 3 years old, so you can't really go on that. So, anyway, that just kind of threw me off guard on that one. Another question is should the video trial for prior authorizations be required to document the ADLs of the recipient? The ADLs the recipient will be completing using the device in their own living arrangement, or is a trial at a facility such as an outpatient therapy office sufficient? When I trialed the Jaco, I was able to trial it in my home, and there are some benefits to that, but I don't think it should be a requirement, especially when most physical therapists don't do home visits. That I think would be the biggest challenge if a requirement for home evaluation was required. Is it helpful? Yeah. But is it necessary? I don't think so. This is just my opinion, so I'd love to hear what your opinions are too. Leave them in the comments below or head on over to the forums at smanewstoday.com/forums. I'm creating a post on this topic, so I'd love to get your input as well, because I'm just one person representing a Jaco user. I want to know what other opinions are as well. And actually, at the meeting, it was almost detrimental that I am the optimal user of the Jaco, because they're worried that people will get it and not use the device, and they're worried that it might be too difficult for some people to use. And as someone who's using it, I don't see that that's the case, but there are instances where that could happen. I don't know. Another question was how long of a trial period should recipients be required to log ADLs and monitor time used? And it was, the options were under 2 weeks, under 2 months, and it was just really weird. I'm used to jumping through hoops to get things, but having to log your use and justify the reasons and kind of estimate how much time you'd be using it is a little bit, I don't know, daunting. And then let me see. The last question was, should MHCP, Minnesota Healthcare Programs, require a video trial of less costly alternatives such as mechanical arm support devices? Again, I don't think that should be a requirement, but I do think that your physical therapist obviously should try other devices to see what would work for you. I myself tried the dynamic arm support, and unfortunately, I didn't have enough strength to use it. So, alternative devices are a great option to look into. However, I don't feel that you should have to video your using them and failing with them to get the Jaco Robotic arm. Again, my opinion, I'd love to hear yours. But I am curious with my testimonials and the testimonials from the company representatives and also physical therapists. I'm curious to see what kind of policy will be put in place. I hope it's not one that's impossible to jump through all the hoops. I know this is a costly device. It's not a secret, and I do wish it was less expensive. But I think down the road it will be if there are more users and it does become more readily available. So it'll be interesting to see what policy they do come up with, and if my input at all is helpful, I don't know. But I'd love to get your input as well. Like I said, head on over to the forums at smanewstoday.com/forums or leave a comment below. I'd love to get your input. And what types of things do you guys do outside of your comfort zone? Share it below. I'd love to hear about it. But that's all I have for now. We'll talk again soon. Bye.